Hello everyone, MasterZeon1001 here, and in this video we'll be going over the texture painting process of this piston that we previously modeled in high, unwrapped in low, UV'd, and exported. So if we turn on the solid texture toggle, we can see what our UV layout looks like. If I select everything and tab in edit mode, we can see what my UV looks like. However, we can also press Q and just go under operations and choose UV display in order to just see what all of our UVs look like. So from here, we'll just pop open Substance Painter, and I'm going to press New, and we're just going to load our files up. So we're just going to load the low that we exported, set our file to 2048, and let's just click OK. And here's our mesh looking great. You know, on this side, everything's rather hard. And on this side, it could stand to be just a little bit harder, but this part I feel kind of falls apart a little bit. I've been really pondering it lately as I've been doing bake tests, but let's go ahead and jump in and set ourselves up with the problem. So I'm going to go to Bake Maps, we'll set ourselves to 2048, and let us choose to import our high. Typically whenever it comes to the high, all I do is just remove a couple of characters from my name matching. We want to match by names. We'll set ourselves with subsampling 2x4. We could raise maybe the frontal distance just a tad. It really doesn't matter until we bake and begin troubleshooting what's going on. And for ambient occlusion, I just know that instead of self-occlusion, we want to enable same mesh name, so that way we have ambient occlusion unique to each part as if it's isolated in space instead of them all being together. So if we bake our map, we're just looking at it, and every time I see lines in between the seams, it just makes me real nervous. And that's just something I've just began getting used to in dealing with this asset. So if we zoom in, we could see that there's some borders that just have a little bit of a differential in the way that they are being rendered. And previously I had texture painted it and even exported it, just ignoring this. However, when it comes to texture painting, just like modeling, when it comes to cutting corners, you want to choose which corners that you're cutting and possibly experiment with cutting different corners every time. So for me, there's some corners that I felt that were just worth not cutting. For example, we see the seam happening in this area as well, and really that's just unacceptable. So let's pop up in Blender and let's try a few things, because when I looked at it, I just immediately had some theories. First thought was I should go in and remark this, but after setting a few alternative seams in a test file, I realized that maybe the setup is actually fine enough. So what we're going to try is selecting this piece, and we're just going to turn off auto smooth. We're going to do the same thing with this side, just remove auto smooth, just toggle it off. And what other parts look questionable? I was about to alt tab, but it's easier to just bring up the window directly. Everything else I feel actually looks acceptable. So instead of just turning off smooth for everything, we're just going to turn it off for the front and the back piece. And so let's just Control Shift S, and we're going to save this file as 1 and 4 because we're on a new iteration. And we're also exporting this on frame 40 because there's animation taking place on this as well. Let's press Q, go under settings, and we'll choose to export the OBJ, and we'll call it 1.4, and we're just exporting the selection. Whenever it comes to hops and exporting, whenever you choose one of our export options, we'll just automatically make it use the selected options by default, because more than likely you intend to export only what you have selected. So it's not so much a deep ponderance. So I'm going to go under Edit and Project Configuration, and let's just load up 1 and 4, which didn't even appear in the same directory. So let's just export it again, but this time we want to make sure that we export it to the correct location. So that is in the Piston demo folder, not in Power Saves. I shouldn't have done that, but you live and you learn. So let's just click OK, and our mesh is brought in, and we see that this area just looks absolutely atrocious, as does the back end. So things can only go up from here, right? So let's click on Bake Maps, and we are going to just use the exact same settings as before. And while looking at the back end, I can already see hope. There's a chance that things just might work out for us. So fingers crossed. The back looks much better compared to what we were looking at before. There's no longer nasty black rings happening around the bake. I also took it into Marmoset, but I realized that jumping to another program just to solve something as insignificant as this is just excess. So instead, this was a solution I came up with, was just removing the smoothing from the shapes that needed it. And with this, we're now able to begin. So, you know, first things first is I like to save my files. And, you know, a disclaimer while I'm saving is there's a good chance that, you know, the way that I'm about to do this is definitely not the way that you would use this or the way that anyone would do it. But the way that I'm showing you guys is just basically my way of approaching texturing whenever it comes to Substance Painter. So I have a really simplified approach. Usually I start off just hitting it with the blank materials, just like as if I was in Blender, right? I would just start hitting it with whatever material suffices for the base. So we're just clicking through them. I forget that even though it names the layer that we added, we can still just click and just see what different layouts look like. So there's not a ton of options here, and starting off with something like this just isn't my cup of tea. Usually I like to have something a little bit more neutral before I actually begin. So maybe something like this, which is actually iron. Let's turn off numpad. And so we're starting out with this. And the way that I approach texturing is every channel has a significance. So the color is obviously the most important to everyone. However, to me, the most important is the roughness. So I always try to tell a story in the roughness. It's just me experimenting with it every time. You know, like I said, I'm not a perfect texture artist or even a model texture artist by any means. I'm just attempting to provide solutions to you guys while we get in here and just play with things, deciding what we want our base color to be. And another thing I thought about is because our piston's animating going in and out, we probably don't want to have too much wear happening on the inside, because how much inside damage happens with this if it's lubricated in grease and pumping oil all the time? It's probably looking good. I don't know. Just what I was thinking about earlier as I was messing with it. But let us continue and not get sidetracked. So if we press C, we see that all of our channels are looking pretty generic. So let's just continue on laying down our bases. So I'm just going to bring in another fill. And plastic matte, if you watched any of my previous videos where I talked about Substance Painter, you know that I just love adding in plastic materials, picking my colors using my ID maps that got baked, and then from there just dealing with things. So, you know, I'll lay in my base, and then after that is all the iterative layering and having fun with Substance Painter. But first things first, we want to lay in these base materials, and I could just use the ID map to paint everything, but that wouldn't be as fun. So let's add another layer. We'll make this one plastic as well. Right click, add mask with color selection. And I noticed that that one's outside of the screen so you guys can't actually see it, but we see that this one is a black material. So let's set it to be black and also lower our roughness. And this one's a non-metal, so there's no metallicity being applied. So let us add another layer. And we'll just make it blue again. You know, I just like blue because it's just so obnoxious and in your face that you have no doubt but to clear out or have a clear understanding of what exactly is going on. And since this one started off blue, we'll keep it as blue as well. And I think we can actually go to this and play with our color selection and just mess with our tolerance to get it to be a little bit more acute with what it's interacting with. And we're so far so good laying down our base materials. And when it comes to layers, I'm not a big fan of naming layers. I mean, there's a lot of people who are, but I'm typically moving so fast and iterationally that it just doesn't matter as much. But to each their own. You know, definitely not trying to tell people how they should work, simply just expressing how I work. So just keep that in mind while you're typing your angry comments. So there's a little bit of aliasing happening with this, so I wonder if we can go to our color selection and actually deal with that, because I wonder if we can right click and add a filter, and under filter we add a blur. And I guess we can blur a little bit to get it to extend. Let's also make sure our setup is set to 2048, and that's what I mean about getting obsessive. You know, at this point we're dealing with pixels and images, so dealing with every single pixel just begins to get a little crazy, especially considering the amount of layering that we have to do. So if we begin pressing C, we can jump through our channels, seeing what our normal mesh looks like, our mask, our base color, our height, our roughness. So really not a whole lot happening with our roughness so far, but let's just go ahead and continue. So we pretty much have all of our base colors laid down, so I'm just going to delete this first layer because I didn't add that, and we'll press Ctrl G, and we're just going to call this base. So this is just our base system. We can toggle it off and on just so we can quickly get back to our base. Let's add a new layer, which now places a fill layer on top of it. It used to place it in the folder, which drove me crazy, but it is nice that it places it on top. Part of what made me want to begin playing with Substance again was actually how great it's gotten recently. So let's just leave this on only the roughness, and we're just going to get random with it. And one of these is textures. I still get lost around all these icons, so let's just drag this onto roughness. We could press C in order to basically see what it looks like as the channel, and then just play with our position and our contrast till we get something that we like. Doing this reminds me a lot of Blender, until we go over to the Smart Mask area, which is just my favorite new addition. This was when Substance Painter was like maxing out, was when users had the ability to add in mask filters. If we press M, we see that this is now what we're basically doing with our roughness, and this only is affecting our roughness, so we can actually call this rough 1 and toggle it off and on, just see what we're doing. And typically I will layer things in, which means I will go to the roughness and lower the amount of intensity that's happening with it till it's the point of subtlety, and then resist any urges I have that would make this actually take place on the normal as well, or the height, because those opportunities will come. But I always play a really kind of chill game whenever it comes with stacking these things up. So, you know, I'll usually go in and just add a couple of these. Actually, I did that all wrong. We want to go over to textures, grab one of our textures, you know, we'll go with just dirt. And let's press C to go to the roughness channel, where we can play with what we're initially receiving. So usually I just decide how much I want. You know, I might invert it, just see what an inversion looks like, which inversions always look very heavy visually to me. So it's just something I immediately need to get in and dial back. So let's hit random, and we will go back over to mask. Let's just choose one at random, like oxidation. And now this is what our mask is looking like. So let's go to our mask editor. And the options for this, one of my favorites is global balance. Global balance is just like master level control for dealing with these things. I mean, we can also blur it, which will get something a little bit more interesting, but I like to keep all those rough edges because I feel like it's important data that is going to assist us with this. So this is going to be something subtle, even though it looks like we're doing quite a bit to the roughness. If we press M, we see that we are just punching levels all over the place. So it looks kind of catastrophic, but if we go under and just begin dialing it back, we are just really just getting subtle with these things. And so that's what I've been doing lately on Twitter, is just posting my images of me just trying to be more chill whenever it comes to Substance Painter, because I used to be a little bit more heavy-handed on the automation side and just cutting in all this wear. But all I could say is, you know, in the real world, some things aren't as damaged as we're making them look. We're kind of getting a little crazy with it. Let's make this one also affect the height as well, just because. We'll just drag it to the height and play with our balance and our contrast. And we probably also want to scale this until it's something a little more appropriate, like so. And we see that the height is just out of control, and our roughness is also out of control. And this is before we actually slap a mask on it. So like I said, we're just getting in here and just having fun, just being random with Substance Painter. You know, things start to get a lot more controlled as we go on, but just starting out, I love alt-clicking a mask in order to see it in the viewport and then going and adjusting it. These are some of those quality of life changes that really make Substance Painter just great, and really going to make it painful whenever they Adobe us You know, I'm sorry to say, I sound like a negative person, I know, whenever I'm talking about it, but I don't know. I'm just always so pessimistic about the future. So we're going to dial that height back because the height was all the way up to here, which makes this thing look like it's been sitting in some sort of like sandstorm for 1,000 years. And so this is definitely way too much. In fact, it makes it look, I don't know, PlayStation-y. So let's just dial it back till it's something. Look, we're at 4 and it's looking good compared to 100. We just dial this back so that we're suggestively just modifying the surface. And even though I wanted to omit this area inside, look at us still managing to make this fit. And if we look at our piece, you know, we're just casually layering the stuff up. Let's press C to jump through our channels. We want to look at our roughness because I feel like its interaction with the roughness is just a little bit too harsh. And we probably want to dial that back. And this one also is interacting really strong with the roughness just on a me looking at the channel level. We don't want our roughness to be telling a crazy story. We just want it to tell just a very simple one, just one of general use. But like I said, I'm always working on trying to refine my understanding of these aspects. So, you know, I'm hopefully never coming across like an authoritarian figure, because my goal is only to suggest, unless I tell you explicitly don't do that, and then, you know, you probably shouldn't. So we just call this rough 1, and let's just continue on with this. I'm going to go to my base color. And one thing I can't resist doing in Substance Painter, I know it's terrible and I know that we shouldn't do it, but I will just activate only color and then hit the ambient occlusion and change it to a multiply. I mean, I know this is some super old school texture stuff right here and we shouldn't be doing it, but I always just, I don't know, I always multiply my ambient occlusion over it just because old habits die hard. It's like the vignette. You know, some people put vignettes on every render, which I recommend against, unless you can dial it back to something reasonable. And some people, like me, just put vignettes on everything. So let's just name this AO, and we're going to add another layer. And for this one, we're just going to jump over to textures, and something that's also fun to do in Substance Painter is just getting random whenever it comes to these patterns, because while this isn't going to be necessarily realistic for a piston, you know, it's us painting it, so we're getting in here and having some fun. However, looking for this in this big list, geez, so many options, you end up picking nothing. Just kidding, I'm being dramatic again, but they put a PT logo. Who's going to be using that? All right, I'm still being a negative pants. I got to stop it. I could have sworn I actually saw a hex pattern in this that was pretty cool. Let's it's not going to be there. These are smart materials. I'm still getting acquainted with the rules of the law of the land whenever it comes to this new substance. I was actually using the last year's version, I think, at the end of the last video, and I wasn't aware, so now we're switching over. So, you know, we could just go with this grid. Let's try it. So we're just going to deactivate every channel except for normal, and we're just going to drop in our grid, and we are just going to scale it. And this is the only area that we want it to be in. So maybe scale it to a point that looks cool. But if we scale it up too much, it starts to look real crazy. So maybe something like that. And I'm also going to take this opportunity to rotate it just slightly so it looks more like a knurl. So something like that. Let's right click and choose mask with, or just a black mask. And with the black mask, we can add a paint filter, or yes, I believe it's called a paint filter. And from here, if we press 4, we can actually use polygon fill. So I'm just going to select, let's see, polygon fill, and we'll just draw a box around this, press 1, and now it's specifically isolated around this area. So let's also change this to normal. Let's rate the current song 1 star so I never hear it again. Alright, might have to switch over to the PC where I have all these tracks rated. But, you know, it'd just be so hard sometimes going through a tutorial while a track's droning on that's just atrocious. But, I'm telling you, don't mess up don't mess up my alternative, man, by mixing genres. It seriously gets on my nerves. Anyways, we want to also maybe give this piece a different look than the outside. So this one is just pipe grate. You know, that's the only name I could come up with it for. And so let us add another fill layer. With this fill layer, we want to play with chest height. And let's find a cool pattern. These look like carbon fiber, but they're just built up out of gradients. So let's just scale it like mad. I almost want to go past 128, but I know that probably doing that in this program would make it start freezing. But luckily they stopped me before I do anything reckless. So I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just being random. And so same thing as before. Let's add a black mask. Let's add a paint filter. And I'm sure there's a faster way to do that. Like I said, all my workflows with some of these programs are kind of antiquated because I read the manual a long time ago and I've just been using it the same way ever since. So there's definitely better ways than what I'm demonstrating. Let's also turn on mirror. One of these is mirror. This one's mirror. And we want to mirror on the Z. And let's just clean this up. Okay, and we are mirroring on the Z. I just can't see anything, but we will see it shortly, probably as we get closer to the middle. We can see it now, at least cleaning up on the inside. And I wonder if there's a face in there, but there probably isn't. I'm probably hallucinating. So let's just deselect this as well, and we're just isolating this. I know it looks terrible right now, but we will be doing something about that. So if we press 1, we can just get out of it, and we're just looking at our handiwork. As with everything that we add, we want to be subtle, because going too hard on it, going too hard in the paint in Painter is just not going to work out for us. So we see that taking this down to something reasonable like 5 definitely has that look to it that I was going for. So let's just call this piston grade. I'm naming way more layers than I would do for a client, just saying. Normally I would just, you know, they wouldn't even get these files, but if they asked for it, the files would just be a mess because I'm just trying to get through it, naming all these dang layers. Crazy talk. So we want to copy what is happening here. So copy mask, paste into mask, and we were able to copy that just like that. Good old Substance Painter. You know, every now and then I check the right click options just to make sure it's popping off nicely, and every now and then there's a new option to greet me that's just so fantastic and a quality of life improvement on a massive level. So I'm always grateful to see what enhancements come. That's why I probably sound bitter in videos when I talk about this, is because when this thing does break our hearts, it will be the worst heartbreak, because what replacement will we have for texturing? So we'll just call this piston base, and for this one we'll also make it blue, and let's just right click, add a black mask, and we can just add a paint layer, press 4, and let's just we want to actually paint this entire piece. I know, really dramatic, but we can go back to face, change it to black, and because we still have symmetry on, it's a lot easier for us than you'd think for us to just unpaint the areas on the rim, because maybe we do want to see that looking the way it does. But you know, we're just getting in here and just having some fun. I'm actually taking this in a different direction than what I planned for, so hopefully this doesn't go disastrous. Alright, and we'll just continue on. Just thinking about how I want to deal with this. You know, we could go to the roughness and have it use the exact same roughness as what's underneath. If we press C, we can see that that isn't the worst choice when we look at our roughness. In fact, we could have it kind of be a blend between the two, which if we press M, you really can't see it very much, but it is there and very subtle. So previously I was obsessed with making things as visible as possible, and now I'm obsessed with making things as subtle as possible. So just a difference in how my balances as a 3D artist have changed over time. You know, I used to really care about people knowing, hey, I did this to this, I did this. In fact, I'm looking at this now and thinking that, you know, first of all, we can just group this, because what is this stuff? This is detail, pretty much. And we could toggle off detail, and we see it is just detail. Let's add the AO in there as well. Let's toggle the rough, and we see that, you know, with the rough, we probably went a little overboard. So let's just see what we're able to dial back. Toggle. This one is very strong. So let's go in and actually see what our mask editor was giving us. If we alt click, we can actually look at our mask, and we see that we have just very strong blacks and whites. I mean, we could use blending modes to get past this. You know, if we alt click and we go back, we can actually change this to be something like multiply, and then we can experiment with multiplying or even screening on it to see what we get. But I'm just dialing it back a little bit just to make it a little bit more subtle. Also, there's a terrible seam showing right here. I almost missed that. We toggle off, it looks like that. Let's change this to be triplanar, and let's look at the next one. This one seems fine. This one is our base. And it looks like it's as a result of modeling related things. So we could also get in and alleviate the geometry, but I'm not trying to actually get obsessive and start working recursively. But that is also something that's an important part of your process as well, is just going back and forth between your program and checking your UVs, which is what I thought I was going to actually be doing today. But it looks like I can actually get away and not have to re-UV this thing and export it differently. But for some reason my colors are looking a little washed out. And we look at, let's see, who's the culprit? Is it AO? AO on our base color is doing that. We're looking at material because I pressed M. Why would, let's change this to pass through on our detail. Let's change this one to pass through. I'm not sure if that's going to be absolutely required. Like I said, there's always something for me to learn from these processes, so I'm definitely not trying to come out like a professor, like, yo, this is how you got to do it, guys. You know, it's more of a suggestion. Take it, leave it, like it, don't like it. Either way, it's fine. You know, playing with the roughness, we can see that we're getting just a little bit more of our bump to show through, which is pretty nice. But another thing that I want to do, or at least experiment with, is adding dirt. You know, dirt is something, you know, a lot of people write and they're like, why don't you add more dirt to your stuff? I'm like, because my stuff isn't dirty. You know, I came from a dirty life, you know, in a dirty town made of dirt. Like, it was literally like made of dirt. So because of that, I envision a future where, you know, robots are cleaning house. I'm actually going to drag this onto it because this is a smart material group, and we see that this dust literally did nothing. So let's undo that and let's look for the regular material that's actually dust. So, you know, do we have one? I bet this version of Substance is not connected to my material collection, so we're actually looking at a more limited set than what I'm used to having on me. I'm pretty sure that's what is going on, because I definitely remember I was collecting dirts and now I have 0 dirt. So I apologize for not actually being prepared today, but we are just going to just try to roll with what we have. up in Substance. But over the years, I've used Substance Share and, you know, collected this and that just to make sure that I just have them for the times where clients require them, because you can't have enough dirt. Same with rocks. Like I'm a 3D rock collector. Like if someone's selling rocks, I will literally buy rocks for silly reasons just to have them, because I feel like the future also involves a lot of rocks. You know, not throwing rocks, but, you know, just them existing. Me and my girlfriend were talking about dirt fights earlier, about throwing rocks at people. You know, shout out in the comments if you've ever hit someone with a rock or been hit by a rock. It's truly terrible, isn't it, to just be hit in the head with a rock? It's like the most debilitating thing ever. Just completely knock you off of your day. So adding dirt is like a step too far, in all honesty. You know, maybe we can make it subtle, you know, really subtle, but there is no subtle dirt. Dirt is dirt, and dirt is going to go hard. So I'm trying to understand how this dirt is even put together. Okay, here we go. This ain't my this ain't my dirt, you know, but we're just getting in, having some fun with it, playing with you know, beach sand. But really, I feel that, you know, dirt is just going to be too much for this, because we're animating this thing going in and out. So if we just get too crazy with it, it's going to look insane, and insane in a terrible way. So let's press C and go through our channel. So this is what our roughness looks like. You know, our goal was to build up some roughness and make something that was just interesting and told a bit of a story. You know, I almost look at this and think, man, I should have a little bit more happening with the edges. For example, let's just add a new fill layer, and we are going to just choose a different metal. And let's just go to our smart mask. And the smart mask worked because we baked all of our textures the moment we came in. Otherwise, these things are just so limited. And we can experiment with having just edge wear, but this is rubber. So rubber is not going to be scratched off and reveal metal. We got to correct that, obviously. But we can always just have a filter. You know, level to choose how far we reach, and contrast to choose how hard we just decide to clamp that at the end. So let's press M or C to go through our channels again. And I'm going to go back to the base layer, and we could actually just have something crazy happening with the roughness in all these exposed areas. If we press M and we look at this, we see that it is quite subtle. I mean, if we were to lower the influence of this on the diffuse channel, which is just my favorite thing, I just try to do all this extra stuff. I almost said shit, but I try to do all this extra stuff on every other channel, and then finally in the end I will just double back and deal with the roughness channel. And let's press C, and I got another song I got to rate a 1 star, so it doesn't pop out anymore. Alright, and we're back in the game. Pressing C, and we look at our mask. Our mask is looking pretty good. Let's press M, and I'm just imagining this thing going in and out. Another thing I wanted to experiment with on this particular thing was having gaps in between these on our bake, and not actually baking these individually, and just seeing how they would result. And besides a little bit of shortening that could probably be dealt with via diffusing, it came out not very bad. So just taking a look at this, we just roll our light around, and it's pretty much as detailed as I want it to be. But we do probably want to add this to the roughness channel or the roughness folder, so we can toggle off our detail, we could toggle off our roughness edits, we could toggle off our base, we could look at just our roughness edits, and we could look at just our details that we're adding to it. So this is what it looks like just unmodified, with everything that we're trying to do for it as far as enhancing the roughness. So we can continue just jumping through our channels, just see what we're getting. We can turn on our base so we actually have something showing underneath. I hate seeing transparency squares, but that just be life. But my experience in Substance Painter is literally me going through and cycling channels all day, literally. I mean, it sounds silly, but that just be life. So another thing I want to experiment with is placing some text on this. So let's just add a fill layer, but we want to add it above this. So we have a fill layer. Let's make it obnoxious blue, because blue dabba dee dabba die, dee dabba dee dabba die, dabba dee dabba die. You know, and you can quote me on that. Take it to the bank. You know, I got a blue house with a blue window. Not really. I live in a brown house with windows filled with cats, because the cats just spend all day in the window. But you almost want to go with just a word, and we just pop it in. But we want to let's right click this, add a black mask, then add a paint, and then whenever we click, we are actually painting this in. So which word best fits what we're dealing with here? I'm thinking unlock. Like, hopefully my keys are conveying what's going on. Like, I forgot that holding control and left clicking allows you to rotate it, and control and right click allows you to deal with scale. You know, it's kind of a weird system, just like Blender's texture painting. You know, not knocking it or anything, but Blender's texture painting, I think, I forget what the hotkeys were, but it was definitely something crazy whenever it came to rotating the brushes, which, you know, I'm sitting here complaining, not providing a solution, but, you know, it just gets crazy. Let's change this to orthographic. I've never worked in orthographic in Substance Painter before. So we are just going to slap this with a forward on the forward side, and for some reason that did not come out facing forward. So let's go into perspective, and we try that, and it looks like that is just not going to work. So let's look at how we're aligning this, and now we can go back to orthographic view, and that is our goal. You know, so it's not going to look perfect, but from our view, that's as perfect as it gets. So continuing on, we might as well just keep slapping this baby with some words, just a few, and we will replace the normal in the places where we slapped this, so that way. And I'm probably going overkill with the text. Like I said, I'm prone to making mistakes, even in design. So just be prepared for it. Let's change it to triangle. And I'm going to turn on mirroring. And we'll just slap it with an arrow, which will give us that on the other side. Alright, we'll dial back on that. We'll place one there. Let's see if we can mirror both on the Z too. We can't mirror on multiple axes. I bet we can, I just don't know how. So I'll check into that. I don't want to struggle on it in video, but I'm pretty sure I'm using the program wrong. There's no way that it wouldn't have multi-axial symmetry. If so, I'll mention it in a follow-up video, but really going overkill. It's so easy to just zone out. You know, probably the fact I have to talk to you guys keeps me grounded to reality and aware that there has to be an absolute conclusion on all of these videos. So let us go to height, and we're going to choose replace. Let's go to normal, and we are going to choose replace. And let's go to base color, and we're going to choose replace. And let's take a look at what that did. Didn't do as much as we expected, so let's go to our material. Let's activate normal. Let's activate height. And we see that now we are able to get the desired result. So because of our texture resolution, it's not going to be the prettiest, But we could always go under our mask in our paint, right click, add a filter, and I'm pretty sure last time I tried this it didn't work out either, so if it doesn't work out today with blur, that's also fine. But it looks like blur has some settings in between, you know, this and too much that can now be used. I remember previously it was a little bit harder. So what if we didn't have color? What if we didn't have roughness? What if we didn't have metallicity and these were just all implied, looking the way that they do? However, which one is it? The height. The height definitely will need to be replaced. And let's go to the height and make sure that we are replacing it. Just sometimes I like to check some of these alternative modes just to make sure. And for some reason I just can't replace the height unless I'm not replacing the height and we are talking about another channel. We talked about the metallicity. So why am I still seeing details popping through if we're replacing it? If we're replacing it on the height and we're replacing it on the normal, then why are we seeing things come through? It actually makes this area regrettable. So I'm just racking my brain right now in real time thinking, what can we do to deal with this and keep this tutorial on course? So I'm thinking that the easiest answer is for us to go under paint and literally paint that out, and we paint that out. I know, not the greatest solution, but I'm a man of hammers. Not as big on hammers as some people I know, but I am also big on hammers. You know, sometimes you just hit it with a hammer and it'll just fear. You know, sometimes fear will get it back on track. I'm also playing with just adjusting the amount just in case. But for this, we're probably better off just playing with our blur intensity just a little bit. And just really thinking about this and looking at it. Do I even want this one to be there? In all honesty, I actually do not need any of it. It's extra. Why am I putting it there? Let's delete it. What are we unlocking on this piston? Gotta keep grounded to reality. Sorry, guys. So with that, I believe that we are possibly done. But we could also, you know, every time I see a new fill layer, it just makes me want to try one more thing. So let us right click, black mask. We'll just double click our hand and bam, we'll just slap this puppy with one of these icky hands, you know, but we probably got to get humongous with our hand. We're gonna have to give it a big hand and then maybe a little hand. So something like that. And you know, obviously we are going so hard on this and breaking all of our rules of subtlety. So sometimes I worry that things aren't even influencing things on the color and that all of the true activity is happening on the roughness. And for this, we don't even want metallicity, so we want to get rid of metal. And we want our hands to be real subtle. In fact, we can see it on the roughness channel. And we want to even dial it back there too. Press M, and no one will know that we did that today. So let's take one more look at this. You know, it's so hard to tell when it's time to wrap this up and move on to the next step. But I suppose just looking through this, seeing that, you know, we came, we saw, we painted it, we painted exactly what was going on in the reference image, which just pretty much makes this the most boring texture job ever. Otherwise, we would get fancy and sci-fi related, but really, we are done. So now let us take this moment to export it. So I'm going to go under File, and we're going to choose to export textures. And instead of exporting them as textures, I want to send this straight to Sketchfab. You know, no holds barred. We just want to go straight to Sketchfab and just deal with it on the online side. So Sketchfab, and we want to make it 4096 because it's a website. And I think everything else is fine, so let us just, I don't know if we exported that. Let's try it again. Export textures. We probably want to choose to export. And maybe it is that easy. We'll give it a moment and let that complete. Oh wait, now it needs my account information. So one moment. Now that I've signed in, we can give this a title. We'll call this Piston 1_4. This is the result of a tutorial. We'll call it Piston Hydraulic. And let's just upload it and just give that a wait. So now that the model has been exported, we can bring up the Sketchfab application in the browser and just wait for that to load. It was just uploaded and we jumped it to 4K at the very last second because we're heartless monsters, but let's just see how it comes out. Instead of waiting, let's just choose Edit 3D Settings. And let's just get in here because I'm just going to edit the 3D settings the moment it loads anyways. And we see that the result that we got from just exporting it straight out of Substance Painter isn't that bad. I was having issues with the endings not looking correct whenever it came to putting it in the browser, but this actually looks pretty nice. So let's go over to lighting and let's change it from industrial room to anything else, something with more values happening. You know, these have the values, but some of them are just too much of those values. And on Sketchfab, I enjoy being able to see the floor too. So let's just enable the floor. Got to rescale Firefox for you guys. Let's go to scene. Background is on. We'll just keep it a color. Ground shadows. Ground shadows look so cartoony, but I mean, we're in a web browser, so who am I to judge? Also, I should not have adjusted the height. We definitely want to keep our floor proper, or else things will get crazy, but it does look really cool seeing the floor in Sketchfab. I mean, I'm such a big fan of this site, so whenever they got sold, I was quite sad and devastated. You know, anytime a company buys something, it's definitely for a reason. So, you know, they bought Sketchfab because Sketchfab had some potential. I saw that. I knew that this site was going to go places. In fact, I tried talking to the creator about a concept of the next level of tutorial through this site, because I feel like tutorials powered by Sketchfab could be like a thing where you click on areas in a model and it would actually load up portions of the tutorial pertaining to it, but I'm just dreaming. And if it would have been executed, we would have just been given the greatest idea ever to whoever bought these guys. So if you're listening, you can have that one for free, but I'm just a sore loser. But yeah, I love me some Sketchfab, let me tell you. So I'm just trying to have at least a good shadow showing, and then we can save our view, and let's just choose to exit. And I'm going to try something that this site probably is not going to support, and that is going into Blender. And you know, in Blender we actually have this set up with an animation, so we want to export this animation and then use it on Sketchfab. So I'm just going to select everything, and pressing Q, we can go under export and choose ABC, and we just want to export this as Piston 1_4 ABC. And ABC files are crazy. They take up no space, which makes them very special. In fact, if I go to the Power Save folder and we look at it, sorry, taking a moment to locate it, but if we look at this, we see that our ABC file is about 242 kilobytes. So it really is nothing in the grand scheme of things. So let's bring back up Sketchfab, and we are going to just choose to edit properties, and we want to re-upload. And I'm going to attempt to just drag and drop this ABC file and replace the OBJ that we put on Sketchfab with this ABC. And if they don't accept it and they say, oh, hell no, it's completely understandable, because, you know, they took an OBJ and now they're receiving an ABC. And for some reason on the ABC files, I noticed that they broke all the materials up into individual groups, even though they were linked similar material in Blender. So we're definitely experimenting right now. Like right now, we're trying something that I just haven't confirmed to be working. I did confirm that I was able to at least replace files, but I didn't replace an OBJ with a ABC and then try to make it work. But, you know, fingers crossed. But it looks like we're having to wait on these servers and 3D. Never mind, it's done. And it looks like all the textures were kept. So maybe the site is about to show me something very impressive. And I am impressed. You know, what else is there to say? This is it. We view our model and take a look at this. This is Piston 1_4. And all I want is for this piece to have some good shading happening. You know, it's simplistic geometry, so I understand that shadows are going to be somewhat cruel to it. And it looks like it's also taken a moment to load up because of all the textures, which I don't think that's actually the case. We need to edit our 3D settings and let's load this model. And I'm pretty sure we're looking at the scenario where we don't have any materials present. And here we are doing the shuffle. So on Sketchfab, they don't have a way for you to share your materials across all of the meshes. So when I complained about it on Twitter, someone replied with linking materials in Blender, which, you know, definitely linked them in Blender, not trying to waste time. Also, I'm going to need to turn on this fan because it is so hot. Probably hot because of what this site just did to me, but you know, this is par for the course on a tutorial. There's always these mundane clicks that have to be done, and I wasn't sure what was going on with that for a moment. It was looking real crazy. So we almost have all of our maps present. Do we even have an ambient occlusion? And we do. And for some reason, as an ABC file, it just does not look as good on this site. But let's just continue on and pretend like we didn't see this, because otherwise we'll get distracted and never get to our deadline. And also, it is getting so hot. I'm sweating profusely, mainly because this model did not work out. And as we import it as an ABC, we see that it just doesn't work out, which I just don't know. But I really want to get these animations onto Sketchfab, and I was hoping that that would be, you know, the tutorial would be like, hey guys, here's how you make animations in Blender and texture them and put them on Sketchfab. So instead of complaining about my dreams being squashed, let's just continue on with this. We are just going to mark our albedo, mark our metalness. Specular doesn't exist for us. So let's go under our roughness and specify that. Just clicking away. So, you know, as I do this stuff over and over, I start to become hyperspeed at it. Just a robot. You know, all the best jobs I've ever done, well, not best jobs, but all the jobs I've done prior to 3D were just push button, brainless jobs where I was just doing a job that a monkey would do, except a monkey would definitely kill themselves doing what I was trying to do. So I was also a monkey, so it's complicated. So I don't even know if I specified ambient occlusion on all the other maps. You know, I'm pretty sure there's going to be some corners getting cut at this very last second. You know, Sketchfab, you showed me the model with everything attached, and then you did me like this. What's up with that, dog? You know, I definitely went through the steps I went through in the order that I went through, because I didn't want to have to go through and actually specify every single one of these darn tootin' maps. I mean, I have to even select the nut and select this nut and give it almost as many clicks as I gave it for downpacking it to assign its maps to it. I mean, what is this, like 5 clicks? Sketchfab, we gotta be able to share some materials, man. This is dangerous business. I mean, I suppose we could have used Marmoset and then exported a Marmoset file and then exported that to the site. But Toolbag, I suppose Toolbag is still our good old boys. You know, we still got them. But we still have substance. But I'm telling you, when their logo looks like it does now, you don't change the logo and don't change the rules of the game. So I'm just scared. I'm like, man, I have mastered a program that is about to be under a big wall. But I'm just talking smack. I gotta talk smack. It's the only way I can get through my grief. But yeah, I'm sure Wesley McD would hear this and be like, why are you emotional about it? It's like, come on, you guys. I used to be so pure Blender, and this program was probably one of the only other programs I ever loved. It's like, you know, you algorithmic boys, you're alright. You're alright, and I will be rooting for you. You know, even through Alchemist, I'm rooting for you. Even though I still don't get what the hell you use Alchemist for. You know, I see stuff about it, and I'm like, I still don't know what the hell you use Alchemist for. So, now we have all these textures done. You know, sometimes you just sit around and complain about something, and by the time you're done complaining, you're done. It's just that easy. But I'm just not pleased with what happened with this on the ABC file. I feel like there's something that was lost that we had previously whenever it came to us using Substance Painter. So I might even check into this and do a revisit on the topic, but I'm pretty sure that the animation that I have set up is not going to show up in FBX if I export it. So it's not even worth trying. I really need ABC to work out. So let's go back to Piston 1 and 4. And we want to change this, not static pose. We want this to be our actual animation. And let's just watch this come to life. You know, 4K textures being loaded on your computer's VRAM through the browser. Maybe the textures will never load. You know, Epic heard me. They're like, hey, get him. Get that boy. I'm a boy, you guys. But yeah, Epic told them, they're like, hey, clip him. Show him what his textures look like as 512 by 512. Like, maybe it's my browser just being very slow. You know, I'm always so quick to be critical, but really this could possibly be my own fault. But let's just wait on it. You know, maybe we could pause it and think about it. You know, start checking out our different channels. We're looking at our roughness and our metallicity, and you know, these are not the channels that we gave this. So let's make sure that we also publish this. And we definitely published it because there's not a big publish button. So if we look at this in the model viewer, it's fine. We see everything. We see the hex that we did. You know, this thing looks great. Great-ish. You know, perfection. I'm telling you, I can get really obsessive with things. And so the only thing I can do is find humor in it and try to pull myself back from it, because it's not beautiful for anyone to get obsessive with things, especially me. So now we're looking at our animation, just playing through on Sketchfab. Even though this part just looks so crazy, I just can't let this have this ring. You know, we went through so much care to make this model the way that we made it, and I just can't get over this. So, and I'm not blaming any particular program. If anything, I'm blaming the ABC exporter. But we're just gonna have to find an HDR that doesn't expose those sort of shading issues, as crazy as it sounds. So maybe something like that, but we definitely want our shadows. And this part also is back to looking atrocious. So I think there may be something with the ABC file format and getting it to actually work on this site. Because, for example, I'm just going to press exit, and let's look at the 3D settings where I believe there's an option to duplicate, but we lost whatever we were just looking at on the website. And let's just choose edit properties, and I'm going to, well, we can't duplicate because that's a pro feature. So that means that I was going to duplicate it and upload the original mesh, but this is where we can leave off. However, I'm going to go back to Painter, and we are going to go back to File and Export Textures, and we're going to export this back to Sketchfab. And eventually something will pop up. There we go. We'll call this Piston 14 underscore SP for Substance Painter. Because I would rather it not even move than look the way that it does, but I really need it to move or else my head will explode. So let us just bring this out in a little pop-up window. And we're just going to look at this again. In addition to that, we are going to look at our other version because it's just right next door. And of course, the computer is going to just make us wait because waiting is just part of life. So I'll pause for a moment while it loads. So now we have the Substance Painter result that we can look at in earnest. And I was really obsessed with having this end come through correctly and also just looking good in general. And we see that this side also looks very good. However, in the ABC file format, we have a few compromises that happen with it that just cannot be explained. However, as I look at it, I am definitely beginning to get some theories. For example, let's go back over to Blender. And you remember previously we turned off auto smooth on everything? Let's try turning auto smooth back on, and we will just choose to copy to selected to make sure that everything has auto smooth enabled. Let's take a look at this mesh, and we are just going to make some very hard decisions for this export because I'm just really out of ideas. But like I said, if I don't get this result, my head will explode. So we're just marking these as sharp, just manually instead of using hops to realign the UVs. We'll press Q, export ABC, and we're just going to call this 1_4a.abc. And another thing about the ABC export is that we see that there are no normal options. There are options for triangulation, which I'm not going to use. But really, whenever it comes to geometry and the way that it treats normals, there are no options for it because I assume it's just rather generic. I'm not very familiar with ABC myself, but I have been experimenting with it when it comes to collaboration with some of my friends. So we have found that it is quite versatile. Also, this nut seems way white compared to everything else. So let's edit our properties, and we're going to choose re-upload, and this means that I'm going to need to locate my piston. So let's go to 1_4 ABC, except we didn't export it correctly again. So I'm going to press Q, export ABC, and we actually want to put this in the piston demo folder. If it's not there, then where are we putting this stuff? So let's find the correct browser, which is this one. And I believe we still put it in the wrong location. Let's try that again. You know, there's probably all sorts of files all over my computer from me exporting it to the wrong location. And this is just 1_4 ABC. So I didn't even put an A on it. So let's pop this up, and we're just going to bring over 1_4 ABC. Sorry about that. And we're just going to replace the model. And I don't expect this to work. We just want it to go through the processing and publish it, and then we'll just look at it, compare it, and then finally wrap up this long and strenuous video. However, the result that came out the way we intended looks very nice in 4K. So all of our fighting to maintain subtlety just worked out for us, I think, because whenever grunge is just too overbearing. I don't know. I just find it being defeatist of the modeling effort. So, you know, still in the back of my brain, I'm still trying to emphasize on the amount of effort that I go through in modeling with the way that I texture as well. But, you know, to each their own whenever it comes to these things. This website was taking a moment. You know, they knew I was about to say something, but let's just view my model. I don't even feel like going into the editor anymore. And if we look at this side, we see that this side looks good. And we have our animation, and this side looks good as well. Well, good-ish. It's kind of variable as far as what is good. But I'll tell you what isn't good. What isn't good is the fact that I just lost everything. So I'm going to go over to Substance Painter, and let's just press X, and I'm going to try doing project configuration file, and let's just try loading an ABC file. Maybe Substance is that type of program. What is this UV material? You know, we just made a serious mistake. Very serious mistake. In fact, I'm going to open this file 1 and 4 because just importing an ABC just destroys it. Where is this default material coming from? You know, this is something I should probably do off cam, but I know that there are no additional materials in this area for it to create a material. You know, we could press Alt V and we look at this in solid mode and we know, or textured mode, and we know that everything is textured because it shares the same material. So I'm just thinking about how I could save all of this, and then maybe we can copy these layers. I know this is crazy talk, guys. I should really just wrap this video before I walk into a bar full of howdy doody. And we'll just, let's delete this, paste layers, and it almost worked. Except, where did things go wrong? If we turn off our detail, we turn off our roughness, we look at our base, it's because under our texture set settings, we actually have no maps present. So if we were to bake our mesh maps based off of the high, just baking our defaults, then everything should get a little bit more sane. But let's also, I'm pretty sure I'm running into some limitations whenever it comes to dealing with this particular setup. I have no idea why a normal, but we can actually see our log and find out. Mesh could not be loaded. I didn't actually expect this to be the conclusion of our video. So for this, I'm definitely going to have to do some investigation and possibly do a sequel to this in upcoming content, but we did at least accomplish our goal of getting in and painting this in Substance Painter and then exporting it to Sketchfab. However, whenever it comes to the final presentation on Sketchfab, there are still some things that I still am not completely satisfied with, but we'll just take this moment to wrap this video for now, and I thank everyone for watching. I'll see you guys next time. In my history of reporting bugs, it has become apparent that it's always me who is wrong whenever it comes to reporting a bug. So not talking smack about the bug reporting process, just saying that more often than not, instead of encountering a bug, it's more likely than not that I've actually run into an issue on a personal level that I just don't understand. So the problem was that whenever we imported an ABC file, the material would basically be replaced with the next one. So just to show how I ended up getting past it is we have our file loaded just like we left it. And if we go under project configuration and we select our ABC file, when we import it, we see that we actually lose it immediately. And that's because UV matte is no longer in play, but default material is. I'm actually going to double click and copy default material. And we're just going to go under file and just choose to open our file again, because we didn't save it after destroying it just now. We did that literally just to get the proper name. And what I'm going to do is just double click, paste that material in. And while this deals with one issue, we still have our shape looking ugly when we import it. So right now, just take a mental note of how good this area looks, and then notice that when we bring in the ABC, it's just beat up terribly. So I do wonder if there's something that we can do to mitigate such damages. In fact, even on this end, I feel it could definitely be looking a little bit better. So let's see if there's anything that can be done for it. So we're just going to discard those changes. I'm going to pop open Blender, and let's go back and turn off auto smooth, because that's how we've just been rocking for dealing with this. So I'm going to select everything, press Q, and we will export it as an ABC. And under our piston demo, we're just going to overwrite our 1_4. And I already know that this isn't going to work out. Sorry to be so pessimistic, but it will at least get us a little bit further than we got before. So what I'm going to do is double click on the name. We're going to paste the name that was added on the ABC file for reasons I don't understand. And let's go under our project configuration. We're just going to replace it with this file. So instead of this just being replaced with a pure white file, we're just going to click on this, and we see that we are at least a little bit farther. I don't like what's going on with the normals in this area. I mean, it's just going to be a ponder for the rest of the day as far as what's going on there exactly. But the best part is, because we have this over in Substance Painter, that means that I can just click on export textures, and we want to export this as a Sketchfab file. And let's just jump forward, and eventually a window will pop up, and we just want to call this Piston 1_4 ABC. This is an ABC exported out of Substance Painter. What about them normals though? You know, gotta at least express my thoughts, so that way people don't think that this is a portfolio piece, because unless it's perfect to my personal criteria, then absolutely not. So we are back on Sketchfab, waiting for our model to pop up, and this is the moment of truth. Are we going to look like a fool, or are we going to get our model already textured for us and displaying everything correctly with our animation in place out of Substance Painter? I mean, Substance Painter doesn't even have a timeline for us to play this back and forth, so Octane's a little bit further in that regard, but not dissing on it, just saying. So let us just go in and edit our 3D settings, because that's the fastest way to see what's going on here. Otherwise, we're just going to be waiting forever. And we see that we actually got our intended result, and the back piece doesn't actually look absolutely terrible. I mean, it could look better. You know, we'll be comparing them at the end once again, but let's just go in and pick our HDR, which there's, I'm telling you, I've been using, as I use things, I just contemplate what it would be like if we made operations for these applications, because there's always optimizations I see that are able to be done. Someone's got to do them. Just kidding. I'm not saying we're going to make HardOps for Substance Painter, but I would be worried that if we did that, you know, we would just be assimilated into the Adobe Borg. So also for this ABC, we absolutely lost our timeline. So we can't even play back the animation. Let's exit, because this is an ABC that we sent into Substance Painter and then exported out to the site. And we see that even right here, we lost the ability to bring it in. Let's edit our 3D settings just to see what this mesh looks like on the material side, because maybe we can just replace it. And of course, it only has default material. It's a good boy over here, but let us exit and just replace the model and watch this tutorial still end in a failure. So we just go back to our power saves, and I'm going to OBJ, locating the piston demo, and we just want to bring in 1_4 ABC. And I wish that we could replace the model, preview it, and then see what happens instead of what's about to happen, which is more than likely going to be all of my model's texture information just being destroyed. So it looks like I couldn't outthink my way of getting through this, but there's definitely a ponder for what's going on in an ABC file that causes it to even create a duplicate material to begin with. I feel like that may be some sort of bug. Now the upload process is completed. We sure have waited on it a lot today. So let's just load our model as AB. And I just got Sketchfabbed. You know, that's what I'll call it when they just remove all of my material information. You got Sketchfabbed. So, you know, we have our first result, which is this one, which actually came out looking quite nice. Actually, this one's not the correct one. We're on 1 and 4. So let's go to our next model, 1 and 4. Wrong one. We want to look at the one that's an SP export. And this is our final result after exporting it to Sketchfab. However, I really wish the animated version would have worked out for us. And with that, we can truly wrap this for today. With every pump of this piston, it's pushing out more and more of my sanity fluid.